Hey, Mr. Chrisley, you have a voice. You obviously have influence. If you want to truly be helpful, consider addressing the root problem for both staff and inmates instead of just calling federal law enforcement childish names. Let's go at this head on, not just from one side.
And shame on anybody that get on his show and not defend the Bureau
Yeah.
of Prisons and the difficult job the staff do.
Hey, everybody, people over with Corrections Unfiltered. I had done a podcast on high-profile inmates, and it was just talking about some of the things that they bring, some of the things that they talk about. There happens to be a high-profile person out there who's doing a lot of talking about his experience in the Bureau of Prisons. And I thought, you know what, let's just get the gang together and talk about this and see if we can figure out what is this all about and the effect that it's having on the correctional staff, especially in that agency and specifically in the facilities at which he's decided to turn his attention to. So let me introduce everybody. Chris McConnell, sir, how you doing?
Hey, everyone.
Charlie Bueno, how are you, sir?
Great. Good to see everybody. Glad to be back.
Good to see you too, Charlie. Thanks for being here. And the one, the only, Rick Harnes. How you doing, sir?
Good. Thanks for having me again, Pete. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. So, Chris, why don't you give us a breakdown on this so we can get this conversation rolling?
Yeah, let me just start by saying, if you serve any length of time in the correction industry, you're going to, become familiar with high-profile inmates like celebrities, politicians, professional athletes, or we'll say high-profile cases, and then you get to know the case and the person involved in that case. Todd Chrisley, who was recently pardoned in 2025. Now, again, I've been in 30 years, 8 different institutions, various security levels. I've had many high-profile inmates, and to me, each one had the same exact title, and I already said it, inmate. Why? Because we're trained to treat inmates the same, firm, fair, and consistent, regardless of who they are and regardless of their status. However, and unfortunately, that's not always the case.
So you brought up Todd Chrisley, and I have seen that he's got a podcast out. He's actually had the director of the Bureau of Prisons on that podcast, and he's had some pretty ugly things to say about people within the Bureau of Prisons. You want to give us some of the things that are on your mind?
Yeah, let me set the stage here. Most inmates are grateful for a pardon because statistically speaking, pardons are extremely rare and are difficult to obtain. Generally, the recipient is very appreciative and vows not to be a recidivist. Mr. Chrisley, on the other hand, appears to be the opposite. He's bitter, he's judgmental, he's very negative, and he talks trash about the correctional workers at his former designated institution, which was at the federal prison camp in Pensacola, sunny Florida. Now keep in mind, this is a minimum security institution. So what does that mean? No or very limited fencing, dormitory-style housing, low staffed inmate ratio, generally low risk, low violent offenders with shorter sentences. Some refer to these facilities as white-collar prisons or club-fed. In other words, it's a more relaxed environment compared to a higher security institution. If you're going to do time in prison, you want to be at a minimum security federal prison camp. So not only did Mr. Chrisley receive a rare and generous pardon, along with his wife, Julie, he served time at Club Fed.
You know, it's interesting you bring that up because I think what he is selling is he was at some penitentiary. He was not in a penitentiary.
When these guys take off from a camp, they'll call it an escape, but it's really a walk away. There's nothing to stop them. They usually have somebody pick them up in their car and they drive off. And, either they come back on their own accord or U.S. Marshals pick them up, through routine stops and whatnot. You talk about the Bureau, the director of the Bureau of Prisons actually getting on a podcast with this guy. First of all, nothing can stop an ex-inmate from starting a podcast or writing letters or having somebody from the media, pass on their message. But why do you think the director of the Bureau of Prisons would entertain this with the former inmate?
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. And let me just chime in a little bit because Mr. Chrisley, he served 28 months. He had a 12-year sentence, got a pardon, did 28 months at Pensacola. And during that short time, he became the influential know-it-all voice for the Bureau of Prisons. And we, along with others, have one simple question. Why? Why does he have a direct line to the director and the deputy director? Why does he maintain such a powerful influence on the agency, all while calling the Bureau of Prisons modern day slavery, or calling the staff ignorant and lazy? Why did the BOP director, like you said, go on Mr. Chrisley's podcast? Why does Mr. Chrisley get invited to attend a RDAP graduation? Why does he brag and say, since I've been involved, there have been several wardens that the director has walked out? How does his voice drive agency decisions? The only thing that comes to my mind is that the deputy director is a former inmate, and now Mr. Chrisley's a former inmate, and perhaps similar to law enforcement having the thin blue line of loyalty, inmates have their own blind loyalty thing going on.
And it is terrible, the things that he's saying about those employees. So here he is I did watch that podcast to get ready for this with the director of the Bureau and Chrisley. And the thing is he's admitting to the fact that he had staff bringing him food. So the public understands that is a crime. That is a crime. So one, he's soliciting staff to bring in items. That's a crime in itself, probably going to be handled at the administrative level with the facility. However, what the staff are doing is a crime. And they could actually lose their freedom over what Mr. Chrisley's doing. And he's bragging about it over and over and over again. He is jeopardizing not only their employment, but their freedom too. And nobody's bringing that up.
I want to just kind of cobble a couple of things together that are sticking in my head. And it's, there's, first of all, none of us on this panel are closed-minded. We've been around long enough. We've seen enough. We know that there's problems on both sides of the fence. There's, you can't just be, we're not black and white people. But there is a lot of talk amongst current and former BOP staff about having a former inmate be the assistant director. Not to say that that's an absolute no-no, but as Chris alluded, there's a thin blue line for law enforcement. What is the benefit of having a former inmate be the deputy director? And where does the loyalty of that person stand? Are they to balance the relationship between the BOP and the inmates? Or what? And are we going to see more entertaining inmate grievances beyond the administrative process? And how, we hear a lot about the Bureau of Prisons having staff morale issues, recruiting, retention, everything. How is this going to help the agency to get back to its core mission, which is to keep incarcerated individuals safe and secure in a facility and protect communities that they're in? It seems like even though they might be trying to, the Department of Justice might have taken a very broad view of things. I think they're kind of causing their own problems too, that have the origins of these problems have their own roots. So I kind of feel like they're might be making a mess of things.
I was taking a look at that and what would be some of the benefits of having a former inmate that's going to have that level of authority over an agency. And it could be that they want to have a message to both. There's one who's going to have a message to staff and one who's going to have a message to inmates to say, hey, we truly are going to focus on reentry. We truly are going to focus on your programs. For you guys doing a number of years, we are going to focus on those things that a prison can provide you to make that time go by as well as possible. I don't know if that message has been conveyed to the Bureau of Prisons. It just really gets to me how much he is talking poorly about the staff members. Why would you ever be a director who supports someone like that, who's obviously making it hard for you? Like you said, Rick, they're not going to hire nobody, and they damn sure are not going to keep anybody.
On the one hand, the agency says, and most agencies say, our staff are our greatest resource, and I agree with that. On the other hand, let's team up with Mr. Chrisley, who constantly insults our staff. As an example, after his pardon, he calls his former warden the worst warden. Not so bad, right? Alleges he had her removed from her position. So, you might be thinking, what does the agency do? will buckle your chin strap. They reward him and invite him back to the same institution he just left to be the keynote speaker at the residential drug abuse program's final graduation. The same prison, as you noted, Pete, he befriended staff to hold a contraband cell phone so he could make unauthorized and unrecorded phone calls. And to put a close on this, the same prison he claims he never once ate in the chow hall, that the food was brought to him by staff and that he paid those staff members for these services.
That was a catered individual from the time he was incarcerated. He thinks he's privileged, and correction shouldn't touch that man with a 10-foot pole and let him go out on his own and bash it. But I wouldn't. I think that's embarrassing that someone would sit next to him and go along with that. That's a damn shame. And there's a lot to be said about that.
You know, it really is a
That
slap.
irritates me.
100%.
That irritates me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So every single one of us, it is.
The Bureau clearly hasn't defined the role of the executive staff. You know, it seems to me like the director doesn't really seem to have a grasp of what his role is, and in turn the deputy director, which should be the most defined because of being a formerly incarcerated person. So I think that's something that they need to work out. And to Charlie's point, why are you giving this guy any time to try to validate what he's saying? You're giving him, when a guy's on there saying the vile things, you're validating that by putting the director on there. You're validating it. And there again, the employees of the Bureau of Prisons, they're the ones that have the tough job. You know, if you're an inmate in the system, it's usually because you had poor reasoning skills. You know, we know that. They decided that the bank was a place where they could, illegally, extract money, or dealing drugs was a good idea and all that. They thought through the possibilities and they said, I'm going to go with it anyway. So you're kind of given the impression that the employees are just there. You're just there, sign up, do your job, but you're given this former inmate a bully pulpit that you don't need. You don't need to drag the morale of the employees down. They're already having trouble with that. We believe in the chain of command. Whether you're prior military or you're just Bureau, you understand the chain of command. The highest level positions hold that they're in charge. And if you've got a key component that seems to have a blurry vision of where you stand in things, I don't think that's any good. I don't think that does the mission any good.
No. And that's what's so sad is, yes, it has been proven in the past to be an effective way of doing it. You have to message it right. The staff have to know it. And then you saddle that up by grabbing a former inmate and let him just trash every person, like you said, Chris, by name, and he's just trashing the agency. And you are wondering why retention is so hard. You're wondering why that you're having problems with staff coming into work.
You think about this, okay? Because I'm sitting here and this is swirling through my mind. How could you sit next to that man and not want to reach over and grab a hold of him when he's talking about us like that? And what gives him the damn right to say that? You get treated above board when you're in there. You get pardoned, and you're still not you're still not appreciative that the damn president of the United States pardoned you, and you still want to come out and make a mockery of corrections. I can't even sit here and fathom that. Because I'm telling you right now, if he came on this show, I would have to say something for us. Because that man that sat there and let him talk to him, he should be ashamed. He should be damn ashamed of himself.
And understanding the structure, the staffing structure of a camp, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, he probably named every staff member employed there.
Yeah, just about. Except, of course, he didn't name the ones that were, providing him, providing him preferential treatment.
Right. Right. Entertaining that as a director of the Bureau of Prisons, I have a real problem with entertaining. Like you said, First Amendment rights and all that kind of stuff. The guy can get on his podcast and say whatever he wants. The minute you enter the arena with that guy, and he's been saying these things, and the director, unless he's been living in outer space, has to know what this guy's been saying about the BOP and specifically about certain employees. That just gives credence to it. And it's embarrassing. I think it's embarrassing for the Bureau of Prisons. I like a lot of the stuff I'm seeing coming out of this new director, putting the hammer down on some of these guys, but I can't cotton to that. No way, no how. I'm with Charlie. That makes my blood boil.
Well, and I respect Julie Chrisley. She did her time and she followed the rules. She was probably the model inmate. And as a warden, I'll take 100 Julie Chrisleys at my facility. Mr. Chrisley, in his own words, was not the model inmate. I have zero issues with a pardon. Congratulations. I have zero issues with Mr. Chrisley advocating for inmates in regards to the First Step Act, Second Chance Act, residential reentry centers, home confinement, release date calculations, or substandard living conditions. Keep up the good work. I'm not okay with him bullying, harassing, insulting, belittling, or trying to humiliate agency staff members.
Mm-hmm. Especially when you did your whole time at Camp Cupcake,
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't even wrap my head around that to even explain what makes you think like that. If you want to say, bite the hands that fed you.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody that took care of you the whole time you were incarcerated, you're turning around and saying what a piece of shit they were.
I'm sure there's a lot more qualified inmates that should have got that pardon than this guy, from the sound of it.
Absolutely.
I don't understand the reasoning, but anyway. Yeah. Like I said, I'm with Chris. I don't have any problem with pardons. OIG did their annual. They have their annual assessment of the Bureau of Prisons, which is always terrible. They've pretty much had bad reviews from OIG for decades. Then you have GAO, Government Accountability Office, or Government Accounting Office. They go in there and they come in behind the OIG, and their report reflects the same findings. Not a newsflash, OIG has a very poor opinion of the Bureau of Prisons. OIG for the Department of Justice is the bully on the block. Typically, the FBI is a bully on the block, but OIG is very heavy-handed, and I'm going to put it right out there. I don't really have a high opinion on most OIG agents. They can't connect dots that are right in front of their face. But they do have the power, and they come in and they look at our security procedures, and they give us a scathing report, and they go on about their way, and we can't close the BOP's door, so they continue to operate. GAO, same thing. We're not using our resources right. We all know that. The BOP doesn't use their resources right. They didn't do it 30 years ago, and they're still not using them properly. And then they talk about staffing issues. There again, staffing issues are kind of something that the government, not the BOP, but the government causes in their own. We're always behind. We're like a slinky with the tail trying to catch up to the front of the slinky. And you see these trends coming. You're going to be losing a lot of staff for a variety of reasons. And instead of making the move to hire more staff ahead of time, you wait until you're augmenting staff. You're taking a teacher and making a teacher work a cell block because you can't get enough officers in. And on and on and on. We all know it's a broken record, same old thing. I think that when the press puts this out, they expect this big aha moment for the BOP to say, now you could do something. And I think, and Charlie, you probably are not aware about how that BOP works, but we know that it's not going to happen, that it's not going to change anything. The OIG report, GA report is not going to change anything about that. And then you look at what we just talked about. with the culture coming out of central office, with the leadership, it's not going to help morale. It's not going to bring people on board.
And I agree. Out of all these problems, you hear people say it comes down to one thing generally, and it's staffing, low staffing. And you talked about retention and recruitment. And I just want to, I know I'm beating a dead horse, and I'm going to beat it. The staff members, Mr. Chrisley is trying to humiliate our mothers and daughters, fathers and sons. He would have a total meltdown, and rightfully so, if someone talked about his family like he talks about them.
Oh, yeah.
These same staff members do a job most people could not do. Corrections is one of those professions where the staff understands what it's like to go home exhausted, but still shows up strong the next day. These staff already feel underappreciated, and Mr. Chrisley's spewed hate is insult to injury. I support free speech, First Amendment, but I don't support constant bullying, harassment, or belittling. It needs to stop. To the staff, I am sorry. Your own agency lacks the intestinal fortitude to say something. Silence is complicity. At Corrections Unfiltered, we are not silent. We hear you, we support you, and we thank you for the difficult jobs you do each and every day, 24/7, 365.
Rick, like you said,
Yep.
they get the same report card year after year. So stop trying to fix last year. Let's look forward. Let's do the things that it takes. If you got the right director, you got the right director. You got the right deputy director, explain them so that everybody, including the public, knows better. But respect your staff. You don't have to get up and denounce this person. You don't have to get up and say bad things about this person who's running around making all this noise, but you need to address it. And there are ways you can address it. And we've met those professional people on this very podcast. We've met people who are trying to improve corrections. We've met them. We've had conversations with them. They exist out there. So to all those correctional staff in the Bureau of Prisons, we salute you. We say thank you for continuing the job that you're doing. We're hoping that the public has the trust that they should have in you. We're going to do the best thing we can to bolster that.
Hey, Mr. Chrisley, you have a voice. You obviously have influence. If you want to truly be helpful, consider addressing the root problem for both staff and inmates instead of just calling federal law enforcement childish names. Let's go at this head on, not just from one side.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And shame on anybody that get on his show and not defend the Bureau of Prisons and the difficult job the staff do. It's just a one-way shooting match when you go on there and just let him talk like that.
The BOP staff deserve to be stood up for. They absolutely do.
I wouldn't even give him the satisfaction of going on there. That's just, the guy clearly has an axe to grind with the Bureau of Prisons. So be it. So what? I wouldn't get on there and give him a voice. He, like Charlie said, he got the luxury of soft time at Camp Cupcake, and then the director gets on there and with a guy that said all these nasty things about staff in the Bureau of Prisons, and gives him validity, which he doesn't deserve. And I think that was a really bad choice on the director's part.
Mm-hmm.
Well, everybody, on behalf of Corrections Unfiltered, we want to say thank you. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it tonight.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.